How about now? Let's see. Can you hear yourself, girl? Okay, yes. I think we're on now. I can hear myself. Hello. Hello. Hello, my loves. Welcome to Sojo Live. I'm Dion. It is my live show direct from my East Coast studio where we talk about sewing, business, and mo while sipping on a strong cup of Joe. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yes. I'm gonna take a sip right now. Yes. Yes, we talk about business sewing and more while sipping on a strong cup of Joe. And I spell Jeaux as an ode to my mama and my roots as a Louisiana Creole. Comment ça va? Welcome. Welcome. If you're new here, welcome. Come on in. Lovely to have you. If you are returning, get in here, girl. Hey, hey. Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining me. I so appreciate it. I so appreciate it, especially on these impromptu lives. I really do appreciate it. If you find the video or the topic that we're talking about helpful tonight, please like the video, show your girl some algorithm love, and of course, share it with all of your creatives in your family and with your friends and all of that. And of course, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. You don't have to do all of the YouTube things, okay? Because your girl is getting trained on all of that. So, yes, please subscribe. And I would love to have you here. And down in the chat, let me know what it is you're sipping on, where you're tuning in from. I would love to hear it. Of course, I am drinking my fancy, girl, it's just iced coffee in a martini glass because I like to be fancy sometimes. Mhm. But like I told you before, I'm also very clumsy. So I am going to place that back there. Okay. So I don't knock it down because I tend to do that sort of thing too. Okay. So glad to have you here. So, in my process of working today, I just decided, okay, what can I share? I was thinking, what can I share? And I'm trying to get myself in the habit of that, being new to YouTube and all. So I was like, okay, let me just hop on and share with them the things that I reach for as I'm doing custom orders for my customers. Why not? Okay, so if you are new to bra sewing, this or bra making or lingerie making or underwear making or however handmade lingerie, this one's for you again because here I'm going to talk about the tools that a bra maker needs, top 10 tools that a bra maker needs in her stash or his stash. And yeah, so I'm going to run through these. It's probably going to be a little bit more than 10 as I'm looking at this. It might be closer to 12, but we'll see. The other thing, too, that I wanted to, just kind of say that I'm making the assumption that you have done a little bit of sewing. Um, and maybe you're still a beginner, that's fine. But I'm assuming that you have a sewing machine. I'm assuming that you maybe or maybe not have a serger, that you've got needles, you've got thread, you've got an iron, you've got fabric shears, pins, all of those basic tools. What I'm going to talk about today are the things that I specifically use when it comes to bra making. There may be a little bit of overlap. So you may find that some of the tools that you use in your basic sewing are also tools that you'll use in your bra sewing. Okay. I try not to overlap as much. I just want to talk to you about those specific things that I use, those things that I grab for on a daily basis when it comes to bra making specifically. So let's jump right in. Why don't we? Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about are the needles. Okay. So, and here's one of those overlaps. I'm pretty sure you've got universal needles, right? Because when you're starting out sewing, universal needles are the ones most people reach for because they can handle all of those fabrics in between, not the extremely thin, not the extremely heavy, but all of those fabrics in between, like medium weight cottons, things that have a little bit of weight to them, because these are the fabrics that are most often recommended as a beginner because they're sturdy and stable and you'll have less issue with them. So you'll need a stash of universal needles, okay? But what you will find is in some cases, because with bra making, the fabrics that we tend to use are on the lighter side, meshes, silks, satins, jerseys, and things like that. Those needles require specific, those fabrics require specific types of needles. Okay, so the one that I want to point out here is stretch needles. Okay, so stretch needles are the needles that you should reach for when you are working with fabrics that have a bit of lycra in them. Okay, like your cotton satins, stretch cotton satins, things that have lycra, power meshes, and things like that. Okay. So you want to use a stretch needle for those. Now, the stretch needles, they are a little bit on the thinner side, but they have like a ball point on the tip so that they don't stab and cause fraying and holes in your fabric. Okay, it doesn't break the threads or the fibers of your fabric. Okay, so you want to get you a stash of stretch needles. Okay, and one that I don't have here are jersey needles. Okay, some people tend to use them interchangeably, but jersey needles are specifically for jersey or for knit fabrics. Okay, and your stretch needles are for fabrics that aren't necessarily stretch, but maybe have been um, made with lycra or something, so it gives them a little bit of stretchability. Okay, so get you some jersey needles. You want some stretch needles. You want your universal needles, and I would say also the last one I'm going to recommend are microtex needles. I don't know if you can read that. And by the way, I will have links to all of these things down in the description. And just full disclosure, I am an Amazon affiliate. And what that means is if you decide to purchase via one of the links, the seller shares a small bit of profit with me. It's no extra charge or markup for you. It just is a thank you for referring you as a customer. Okay. So, microtex needles. These needles are great for silks, satins, very, very fine fabrics because they are very thin. Okay. You want to get a good stash of these and the other stretch needles because when you're working, with bras, you may be working with a very fine fabric, but think about the fact that you're layering it, you're accompanying it with elastics. In some cases, you're doing hooks and eyes, and some of the elastics are very thick, right? So sometimes you're going to have to change the needle from the very thin type of needle to one that is more on the universal side. Because as you pile on, things get a little bit thicker, and you're going to need a stronger needle to work with those things. Okay. So you want to have a good little selection of needles just so if you have to change it, because sometimes you just have to test that situation. You're not going to always, pick the right needle in the beginning, and you never know, and how your fabric is going to behave. So in the real situation, you'll figure it out because you'll maybe hear some noise from your machine. If the needle's not working well, you'll hear like a puncturing noise, or you'll start to see you'll see like little wispies coming out of the fabric because the needle is too sharp. So it's a thing that you kind of want to, just kind of take a look at and before or as you're getting started on to sew a garment. Okay. So we've covered the needles. And the next thing that I want to point out now, this is something that when I first started out, I used religiously. And honestly, I still kind of do. I can never keep it here because I use it so often. And I don't have any tonight, but I'm going to show you a picture of it. Okay. And that is spray adhesive. Okay. And the one that I typically use is this one, the 505. Okay. So I use this one because it's very strong. And I don't know if you've watched any of my other videos. I talk about like some of the stitching process. You may want to baste some things in place until you can get the more permanent stitch in. So with the adhesive, this acts as a basting stitch. So a lot of times when case in point, when I stitch on lace to a cup or something like that, it's hard to um, get it right. It get the placement right. So you have to kind of put something there temporarily to so that you can step back and evaluate it. So a lot of times I would use that spray adhesive to lay it out. And so I bet you I used it in both of these cases back here. Okay. So, and I love this stuff because it works really, really well. Another example of why, when and where I would use the spray adhesive would be like, because I mentioned we're working with very fine fabrics. The other thing that I tend to use them for, sometimes I have to layer pieces together, and some of my designs use a floating gore, which is that little bridge in the center of your bra. It's a separate piece, right? It's not part of a full frame. So it's a separate piece. And sometimes that makes it a little bit difficult to work with because it's so small. In addition to, I'm working with very, very fine, slippery fabrics. So when I'm doing that center gore, I like it to be very, very stable and very supportive. So I will sometimes double the mesh that I put in there to stabilize it. And I may sometimes use the adhesive to double those layers. Sometimes even with the cups and things like that. If I'm layering a stretch fabric with a more stable fabric, I would spray adhesive that because I just really want them to kind of stay in place long enough for me to stitch everything together. Okay. And so that stuff really comes in handy. It's 505. I think it's OFA. Let me just put that back on the screen one more time. ODIF. I think that's the right don't quote me on that. But this one's really, really good. I use this one a lot. Okay. All right. So the next thing that I want to talk about is drafting paper. Okay. So this is drafting paper, very, very thin. It's almost like a consistency of a tissue paper, maybe a little bit heavier. You know, the tissue paper you use for gifts. It's a little bit stiffer than that, but I keep this on hand because it very often, especially, in my case, it's for drafting. I use it a lot for drafting. But in your case, you're probably not going to be drafting right away, but what you will find, not may, but you probably will find that when you purchase a pattern, it's never going to be perfect, right? You're going to have to make some adjustments. The cup may be a little bit too loose or you might need to add some volume in the cup just to fit you perfectly. Whenever you start editing and your patterns, I think I would advise you, especially in the beginning, because you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to probably go a little too far in one direction and want to go back. I would say take your original patterns, trace them out onto the drafting paper, and then make all of your edits on the drafting paper. That way you keep your originals in the original condition. So if you have to go back to them, you can. And also, too, there are probably multiple sizes in that pattern, right? So if you cut out the wrong size by mistake, then you can always go back to it. Okay, so I use the drafting paper for drafting, but also for the editing process. Okay, so it's very easy to work with. You can see through it, so it's very easy to trace your patterns and things like that. Okay, so and that lasts me a very, very long time. I would venture to say close to a year. That will kind of be around, hanging around. Okay, because I'm working with very small pieces, lingerie pieces, right? So it's not like I'm, tracing out a pair of pants or something like that. So I live by that as well. Okay. The next thing, so along with editing, okay, I would say that you should invest in some curves. Okay, so like the French curve and the hip curve, I would invest in some of these because when you're making those edits, right, you're going to be left with sharp edges, and you want to kind of smooth those edges back out so that it's a nice, clean, and good fit. Okay, so invest in a couple of those for varying sizes. Okay, so that I also grab on a regular basis. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is marking tools. Okay, so I love these guys. These are water soluble pens, means that the markings disappear when they get wet. But I also live by the traditional Tailors chalk. Mine is just a little bit fancy because it's in a plastic case and it's just filled with the chalk powder. Okay, but it works the same. It's got like a little wheel down there, right? And you can see that it marks in the same way. So when you are working with bra patterns, your seam allowances are going to be very, very small and likely a quarter inch. And that's a very tight space for you to cut the little snip in that we typically do when we're cutting, or notches when we're trying to mark notches. What I would say, it's better, especially in the beginning, to just mark it with one of these guys because the markings will disappear. Um, And yeah, I would advise against the snipping in the little notches because it's so easy to go too far, right? And I'll be honest with you, when you're doing bra making, any little mistake in your stitching, it actually shows through because it's such a close fitted garment that if your stitching is off, you're going to see a lump and a bump, okay? So, and that will take some practice. Just be patient with yourself and you'll be totally fine. Just when you make a mistake, just resign yourself to the fact I'm going to make mistakes and it's a learning journey, okay? It's a learning journey. Right. So get yourself some markers, right? So that you can mark out your notches that way. Okay. Let's see here. The next thing I want to talk about, and these are my faves. Okay. These are my absolute faves. Okay. I got a bunch of these and I'm not even showing them all to you, but these are my rotary cutters. Okay. I love these guys. I live by these, okay? Especially when it comes to bra making because again, it goes back to such small pieces. You're working with small pieces. And so I have a variety of sizes here as you can see, right? Some work better for, cutting out bra pieces than others. I go for this one more often. I think this is the 28 millimeter. Yeah, this is the 28 millimeter. This is my go-to, right? Now, sometimes I will use this one to help cut out like appliques, like following the tracing marks on some lace in the shape that I want it. But it doesn't always work well for that, okay? But this is like really cool and it's very, very sharp. These are very sharp, very, very sharp. But I love these so much because you get exact cuts. And I love them better than working with fabric shears when it comes to bra making. And to be quite honest with you, most cutting, okay? Because I want cutting to be fast and accurate. We don't want to have to cut again, and we don't want to feel like, I messed up a garment because, I got crooked cuts. So I tend to go for these on a regular basis. I rarely use my fabric shears to cut out fabric pieces. I use them for other things like snipping, sometimes snipping like curved edges and things like that. But because they're in the drawer next to me, but I use these to actually cut out my pieces. Okay, it's fast, it's accurate. Now, if you're going to get those, then you have to have a mat, a cutting mat. All right. They come in a variety of sizes. I have a little small one here because, it fits my workspace in here. But in my cutting room, I have a full surface cutting mat that covers my entire table. Okay. And I love it. I love it because I cut everything on there. Okay. And this helps to save your surface. So you want to make sure that if you are using cutting the rotary cutters, then you want to get a cutting mat to go along with it. Okay. And again, links are down in the description. Are you guys having fun? I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, just hit me up in the chat and I'll be checking to make sure that I'm not missing your comments. Okay. All right. Let me just make sure here. Okay, yes. All right. So the next thing that I want to talk about, since we talked about the mat, the next thing I want to talk about is another cutting tool. Okay. So if you decide that you want to get into, adding lace appliques and things like that to your lingerie, which is a very nice, dainty detail, not just making it a panel inside a pair of panties, but a detail like that, right? Where it's just a part of the design. It's not an actual panel or it's just decorative. Okay. If you want to do something like that, then I would invest in some of these guys, right? These are applique trimming scissors, very, very sharp, ergonomic. I love these. They're very, very, very sharp. And they are so good for cutting very small things, but very accurate and quick. Okay. I love these. Okay. These are great for cutting applique. So where these fall short, I pick up this. Okay. I pick up these guys. Okay. All right. So the next thing that I want to talk about is tube turner. Okay. Now, in some high-end lingerie, and this may be something that you're not interested in doing right now, but maybe down the road. In a lot of in some high-end lingerie, you might see the straps on the bras are covered. They're not exposed like your typical ready to wear. But they are covered, like especially in silk ones, and they look like this. Okay. I love this detail. It has a very luxurious feel. Okay. And in order to achieve this over such a long tube, right? Because, this tube is a lot longer than the actual size of the elastic. That's how I'm able to get it to have all of this ruching going on here. Okay. So if you want to achieve something like this, I would recommend a tube turner. There's a variety of them out there. The one that I'm going to show you is on the expensive side, but it's my favorite. There are definitely more inexpensive options out there, but I just love this one. The one that I have is called Fast Turn, and the tubes look like this. Now, these are the smaller ones. I didn't grab the big ones, right? Because there's one that's big enough to fill up this tube here. All right. So the way this works, this is a tube turner. So what this does is when you're stitching a tube, you're stitching right sides together. If you want to turn it right side out, then you would use something like this. And you could also use it to turn it right side out while feeding the elastic through the tube at the same time. So that's why I love these things. Okay, so the way it works is you would put the tube over the fabric tube over the tube. Yeah, you would put the fabric tube over the tube, right? And then it has this little guy here, and you can see there's a little hook at the end there, right? So what you do is once you've pushed on the fabric, okay, then you actually feed this little spring guy here, through the tube, right? And you see it pops out here at the end. So then you would take the end of your fabric tube and hook it onto this guy right here, right? And then you would slowly pull this out and push the fabric over the tube. And then when it comes out the other side, out of this side, it's turned right side out. And if you had an elastic also attached to it, the elastic would now be inside the tube. So let me know if this is something you would like a video on. I'm happy to show you and give you demonstrations on this. I love this tool an awful lot. Okay, because I just love the look of these types of things. It just adds that much, it's just, a feeling of luxury. Okay. So I love that. All right. Okay. So now, another tool that I wanted to mention, and this is also a measuring tool. Okay. And that is my flexible ruler. Okay. See, this thing is really cool. It's flexible. You can mold it into any shape that you need it to be molded into. Where this becomes really, really handy if you are, let's say, in the beginning of making bras or whatever, and you have a bra that you really love the fit of, and you don't want to destroy it by opening it up and pulling out the underwire and things like that, you could run this along the underwire, tracing the underwire, and be able to measure what that underwire looks like. And also because this actually like keeps the shape that you put it in, you can also discern the actual shape of the underwire so that when you're shopping for your perfect underwire, then you could use not only the measurement, but you can also use the shape to help you identify it. So this is awesome. Now, the other thing too, this is awesome for doing a root trace on your body. Basically, measuring the width of the root of your own breast, so you're able to kind of, see maybe what size it. Let's just say you don't have a perfect bra, but you want to measure the size of the underwire you feel like you should have. Then you could also use this to measure underneath your breast tissue and tracing the root of your breast. Okay, and that's where it resides along your rib cage. Okay, so you would basically be putting this against your against your rib cage underneath your breast tissue. Okay, and you might have to lean forward in some cases, because some of us have more than others, and you may have to lean forward to make that happen. So this is great for also that sort of thing. So measuring yourself, okay. But I also use this in drafting bras, right? So when I am, working with a customer trying to figure out what their underwire is and all of that, I'll use this once I know to help me to draft the pattern. So I love this guy an awful lot. Okay, so there's a variety of these out there too, but this is my favorite one because I love that it stays in shape. It keeps the shape that you put it in. Okay, so this is my go-to for that. Okay, just check. Now, one other thing I wanted to show you that might be something you already have in your stash, but I'm going to mention it because in dressmaking you may be used to pinning things down when you're cutting things out. But when I do bras, again, it's very small pieces, right? So I don't do a lot of pinning. I put the pattern piece, I put the fabric down and the pattern piece over it, and then I use fabric weights, okay, to hold things in place, making sure. And I also have some others, and I think I've shown those on the channel as well. They're like just little washers that I got from like the like a Home Depot or something like that. But you can also purchase fabric weights like these that you would just kind of throw around on your pattern piece and then use your rotary cutter and mat to cut your pieces out very quickly. I wanted to mention these because this is something that I use more often than pinning things down. So I know that as a beginner, pinning is more the traditional way of doing things. And in some cases, pinning is the best way of doing things. But I love time saving things, right? Techniques. So I use these guys a lot. Okay. And I've got like a bunch of those just kind of hanging around. All right. And I think I'm here on the last one. Okay. So the very last tool that I want to show you is my ham. Okay. This is a Tailor's ham. Okay. And this one is the round or half ball Tailor's ham. Okay, this is a go-to because when you're stitching curves and you're stitching, especially cups, it's tough to iron them once you've got because those curves are pretty sharp. So it's tough to iron them and without creating a crease somewhere else, right? So this is often called, a tailor's ham, but there's others. When it comes to bra making, it may be called a bust pressing tool or a bust ham, a variety of things, right? So this is awesome for pressing and making your projects come out more beautiful, more professional looking. Okay, when you're able to press out your seam allowances. Let me just show you really quickly. So I have this is the bra I've been using for the past week. Okay, let's see here to show you how that works. Okay, see how nicely the cup fits over the ham, and then you would just pass the iron over those seams, right? It makes for very professional looking outcome. So if you're in this to maybe start working, doing custom work for others, you want to invest in something like this just to kind of keep the quality of your projects at a certain level. Okay. Now, what I will say is I've worn my other one like this out, and I usually have two of them. I'll be making a second one in a sew along tomorrow. So why don't you join me for the live sew along of a Tailor's ham tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So set your reminders, okay? And pull some scrap fabrics, okay? We're going to use, there's two layers here. We're going to use cotton to stabilize on the inside. And then on the outside, you can use, I've got a cotton here as well. And I tend to kind of stick with that because I can raise the temperature really high on this, even though with, the fine fabrics, you're likely not going to do that because they can't stand very high temperatures. But If you want to know how to make one for yourself, you don't have to go out and buy one. I will be doing a sew along tomorrow, and I would love it if you would join me. How would you know? How are you going to be reminded? You got it. You have to subscribe and you have to hit the notification bell and set it to all so that you can join me. And I so look forward to seeing you there tomorrow. That is, I think, it. I have covered all of my little go tos. And like I said, it was more than 10. I apologize for that. But I hope that you enjoyed it and I hope that you got something from it. And I hope to see you tomorrow. And until then, remember to create something beautiful. I'll see you tomorrow, guys. Goodbye.